Okay, let's go.
It's time for Be Picked. When you're ready to move from clicks to clients, learn to be picked.
Welcome to Be Picked, the podcast where we talk about how attorneys in small firms, solo practices, and others can get themselves found on the internet and build their business. I'm your host, Andrew Kolsky, and today we are talking with Chantal Williams. She is a business development and marketing expert in the legal industry, and she's been doing this for 20 years. So Chantal, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be on the show. And hopefully we'll be able to add value for all of your audience. Lawyers that want to do a better job, that want to be able to grow their practice and become, better lawyers and have more interesting matters to deal with or transactions.
Yes. Well, and that's sort of the genesis of this show in the beginning, is that I recognized that there were a lot of lawyers out there who were working very hard to be good lawyers, but you can be a great lawyer if you don't have any clients. It doesn't really matter. So client development does not tend to be the highlight of a lawyer's career. I learned nothing about it in law school. I don't know if anybody else did. But it's important, because without the client, there's no work. So these days we've got, social media, everything from YouTube to LinkedIn to Facebook, etc. We've got websites, we've got networking events, so many different things and so many places for people to focus their attention. It can become overwhelming. And also, nobody's really trained in how do you do an effective YouTube video if you were going to go that route, or what is LinkedIn best used for? So I'm curious, I'm going to give you an opening question, which is, in your experience, what types of things should people really be thinking about if they had to start somewhere? Where do they start?
Okay, well, for me, it's a very simple way to think about it. You have to figure out where you are, who you are, what you like to do, and where you would like to be. And then you have to make a very brief analysis. It doesn't have to be exhaustive. And it's basically, these are the things I'm good at. I want to make sure that the next two, before it used to be, you would think 5 or 7 or 10 years in advance. Now I think you have to think, where do I want to be in 2 or 3 years? What am I good at? Where am I? And then you have to start trying to say, okay, I'm a lawyer, and I love, practicing law. I didn't study business development or marketing. Mm-hmm. And there may be many things I don't know how to do. But I've got to take it slowly. And it's slowly but surely start adding certain activities. So, for instance, one of the things that I've talked to a lot of lawyers that have become very successful and very good at this is, don't become overwhelmed. Okay, so you are starting your practice, or you're 5 years into the practice, but you want to make a certain amount more of money, or you want to have more people on your team. You've got to decide what your goals are, and you have to be able to visualize that. And then after visualizing, which sounds, very, very silly, you have to be able to visualize, and you have to be able to say, I know I can do this. And then you have to start creating the plan of how you're going to do this. And many times what you need to do is say, okay, so I don't have a limited time to focus on business development or marketing, but I know myself enough to know that either I like to write, and I can write, I can commit to a certain amount of writing, maybe one piece a week, whether it's an article or it's a post. So you have to decide that. You have to decide, my personality is, I like giving conferences and I can do it, and I'm part of a certain association which has to do with my industry or has to do with a certain practice or the type of clients I have and would like to have more of. And then, of course, you can say, okay, do I like podcasts? Do I feel okay going on a podcast? If I'm going to write an article, I'm going to write it for myself on LinkedIn, or am I going to reach out to a third party, right? And who would that third party be? And obviously that third party, thinking strategically, it's got to be part of your plan. Are they talking about the industry you're trying to move in or trying to get more clients? Are they going to help you not only with visibility, but with credibility? Mm-hmm. So it's basically saying, this is where I am. I know what my objectives are. This is where I want to be in 2 or 3 years. I have to do things consistently, have discipline, and decide where I feel comfortable doing it, right? Whether I'm going to focus, and I normally tell people your first 6 months, start doing one thing monthly. Like start writing an article for a third party or start having more visibility on LinkedIn. Decide your activity and make it something that's doable that you don't feel overwhelmed. And then start adding other things that make sense that give you visibility, but not just visibility because, sometimes people say, or you've heard, like I've heard throughout my life, visibility, it's never a negative thing. I don't agree with that. I think you can have negative visibility that takes away your credibility, especially as a lawyer. So what you want to do is every single piece of content or interaction that you have that helps you generate visibility and for people to know that you exist has to help you with credibility. You're an expert or you have a lot of experience in a certain area, what type of clients you have, it has to help you. I don't think it always has to be that the opportunity has to be like, is this going to generate always more clients for me? You also have to think, and I've learned this the past couple of years, sometimes it's other types of opportunities, right? It's a speaking opportunity or it's some other opportunity that comes along. And then a lawyer is at a conference where they're speaking on a panel and, talking about a specific topic. And then all of a sudden, the client might not come from there, but they may have a new opportunity that's not business related, but that it's important later on and it helps you get business. So just because an opportunity you say, oh, I might not be able to, get a client here and I'm not going to see something immediately, which is also important. You've got to put in the work. If it's a good opportunity to create credible visibility and it's something you feel comfortable doing, either speaking or writing or whatever the activity is, you might think, it's a good option to do. And you also have to be willing to get out of your comfort zone. Super important, right? Because lawyers are like, and I know a lot of lawyers, a lot of them are friends, and a lot of them are like, yeah, I like working, I like being in the office. I don't like to, I don't want to be networking too much. I want to focus on what I want to do. I want to talk to the clients. I want to see that everything is going well. And they're very good lawyers. But like you said, today it's not enough to be an exceptional lawyer. There are a lot of exceptional lawyers all around the world and in every city. So what you have to make sure is you're a great lawyer, you're a fabulous lawyer, but you get yourself out there and you need to let people know that you exist. Currently, I'm in Mexico City, and I think that a very interesting Mexican phrase works very well for this concept. And it's basically the translation is if a saint is not seen, he cannot be adored, right? So it's this concept of I need people to know I exist. I need people to know what I can do for them and how I add value and why they should hire me. Develop that connection with possible clients or with current clients and integrate a plan that continues to create that visibility, credibility that gives you opportunities, direct business opportunities or opportunities to get yourself out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you used two words there, one more than the other, and I want to focus on that. You talk about visibility and you talk about credibility. And this is something that I talk about a lot. And I spend time, I read different lawyers' forums and places where people talk about how to market their practice and all. And the thing that I consistently see is this hyper focus on visibility, which is important, but no focus or almost no focus on credibility. So for example, I will see post after post after post about, oh, I know a great SEO guy. You got to do SEO, SEO, SEO. Everything is SEO. Okay, SEO is important for visibility, getting to be a little less important now with AI coming in. So you have a totally different approach that has to be done. But if somebody finds you and you have a beautiful website, that's great. But if you have no credibility because you've done no outreach, like you were talking about, written nothing, no blogs, no articles, no speaking, no nothing, people don't know anything about you. And if you've got a competitor who also has good visibility but has great credibility, who do you think people are going to hire? So it's such an important piece that I think is missing out there.
No, I totally agree. And lately, I was thinking about something. I was talking with a friend that's also in the industry, and we were talking about how it's really interesting. And I just actually wrote something about this because I was like, this is actually very, very obvious and very intelligent, but very obvious. But sometimes we forget the obvious. If you have a lawyer, like you say, that's like a very good lawyer, and then you have the competition that's a really, really great lawyer, and one of them has visibility and they've written articles and they've gone to conferences and, I don't know, they're ranked in chambers or legal 500 or depending on your practice, because you have obviously chambers and legal 500 are very important. But if you're in Latin America, you have Latin lawyer. And if you're in arbitration, you have global arbitration. I mean, it depends. They're very limited, the really important ones, at least the ones that I'm seeing right now in Latin America. But what I think is really interesting is somebody that has been developing that relationship, because you are developing a relationship specifically for lawyers on LinkedIn. You could also do it on YouTube if you're giving a great informative session or on a panel. But the time that somebody will take in giving you an opportunity to handle their matter or their transaction, if they feel they know you because they've read you, what you think, what your values are, where you're strong, your insights, and you're adding value, it's going to be basically all the time. You're going to have a very short moment of, I'm looking for a lawyer that does exactly that. I know who it is. I've been following this person in social media or in conferences or different activities, whatever those are. And I feel I know them. I feel I know how they think. I like what they're talking about. I like their personality. It's going to be a lot easier for that person to immediately get an offer, a mandate, than somebody who has very little visibility, obviously, or somebody that has visibility, but you're like, I see your visibility, but it's really not adding value. It doesn't help me to see what your strengths are as a lawyer. So I think that's also really, really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, basically, what you just said, the way that I look at that is when a lawyer has a lot of credible information out there that is addressing the actual need that the client has, then the client is going to be looking at that, and then they're going to reach out to that attorney specifically because that attorney has shown that they know how to solve that client's problem. That is entirely different than a cold call from a client who just saw a website that says you do this type of law and they know nothing about you. They're going to have a lot of questions. They're going to be concerned because, they're going to be putting out money and they want to make sure that you're going to give them value. And they have no way of knowing what your credibility is other than, wow, you have a really nice website, but that doesn't tell me anything. So, to be pre-qualified and to have the client search you out, you're already hired before they even call you.
Yeah. No, and you mentioned something about AI, which is interesting. It's not just obviously very traditional types of media that you can use and or social media with AI. Obviously, AI. I did an exercise and I looked myself up. Obviously, Chantal Williams is a very popular name. I've basically seen a lot of it in the United States, and I've seen a lot of it in the UK. I mean, it can be everywhere, but those are places where I've seen it. And I looked myself up on different AI tools, and it actually hit me. Like what I mean by hit me, it's like it found me, and it said, this is a person that knows about BD. It's a person that knows about marketing and the legal industry, and it said a lot of things that I said, okay, so I'm doing the work I need to do, putting myself out there and working with AI, so that if somebody looks me up, AI will also give them a recommendation of, yeah, it's becoming, I think it's kind of like a third party right now. I don't know how it's going to transfer in the future, but it's kind of like a third party saying, yes, I validate this information. This is what I have on this person from everything I'm gathering, from everything I'm seeing. So it's interesting you said AI because it's something that lawyers need to start considering. It's not enough to be on social media. It's not enough to give a conference. It's not enough to write an article. You have to make sure that as the world changes, you're innovating as well. And you're making sure that any tool anybody can use to look for you, it's in good shape. It's going to find you and it's going to help you out to get the business you want to get and to work with the clients and the deals or the transactions that you want to work on.
Yeah, yeah. And, I mean, a simple way, I guess, that I can get across the difference to the audience between SEO and we have not come up with an agreed upon term yet for AI search. I call it AEO, answer engine optimization. Who knows if that'll, catch on. But the difference is SEO says, let's take a look at all the searches on the internet and see the terms that people search most. So best restaurant near me, for example. AI is more about looking for questions and answers to those questions in a format that's easy to reproduce to the user. So if somebody says, will bankruptcy take care of my student loans? AI will give you a question and answer format versus SEO, which will give you a website where somebody talks about student loans and bankruptcy.
Yep. So, yeah, I think it's important that you're aware that the world is changing and that you're going to have to change your strategy and where you're putting your attention and your energy. So,
yeah,
I totally agree with what you said. And I think that's a great definition because since AI is changing so quickly, it's interesting. We have to keep up, and the concepts and how it has an impact on our, on careers and on how we live the world and how we're processing everything that's happening at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, if someone's listening to this podcast and they look at one of the blog posts that I have, I typically will do a blog post related to each episode. You'll notice in each blog post, I end up with a frequently asked questions section. And the reason for that is because that's what AI looks for. So, the content is important, but to put it in a format that AI can find is even more important these days because everything is shifting. Even if you go on Google now and you do a Google search, what's the first thing that comes up? An AI blurb from Google, Google Gemini, that talks about, the answer to whatever your question is. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. What truth about success do most people realize too late?
That you have to fail a lot. I mean, sometimes we hear it about painters or Michael Jordan said it, I failed a lot and that's why I was able to be really good. You have to be able to be vulnerable, to have the courage to be vulnerable, to make mistakes, to not be perfect. And obviously, I'm not speaking if you're a lawyer, you're not going to study whatever you're talking about and you're going to say something that's not correct. What I'm saying is, if you don't have all the exact words, if you don't look perfect, if you're tired, if it's okay. The important thing is do things correctly, have the correct information, and put yourself out there, like in that instance, for that example. But you have to be willing to be yourself, to make certain mistakes that don't affect your credibility. Like, oh, she looks really tired, or it's fine. You don't have to be perfect. But you have to learn from all of those mistakes or from all the things that you wish you could improve. And that way you start realizing, okay, so this doesn't work for me. I'll give you an example, like what I've seen with lawyers. You know what? I'm going to write an article. Okay, perfect. Great. Let's create your whole plan. We're going to start with an article a month or an article a week. And we're going to write for whatever editorial. Perfect. And then, the week, we're on week 2, I'm like, okay, well, you still owe me like an article for like last week, and you're going to have to give me this article like in 24 hours. Yeah, but I've been writing it and it's not perfect and it's not exactly, what I want. And I'm like, okay, make it simpler. You need to make it simpler and you need to commit to, it's not perfect, but is it accurate? And does it have the points or, are you completing your objective in offering value, correct information to a possible client or to a client or to whomever's reading it? Yes, you need to let go of the perfectionism because you can stay there and then we're not going to have one article. We won't have the second one. We won't have the third one. And if we do the same exercise with a podcast or with a panel or whatever you want, and you're not able to let go of, I want it to be so incredibly perfect, you're never going to get there. And it's going to be an excuse for not getting things done. So I've seen a lot of lawyers that obviously, want everything to be perfect, but they're willing to go out and be like, okay, so something may not come out perfectly. it's okay. And they learn from what worked and they learn more importantly about themselves. You know what? Writing's really not for me. I would rather make sure that I go to a conference once a month and I network and I talk to people and I add value. Um, okay, that works for me. Okay, well, clearly the writing of the article wasn't exciting or it was too difficult for you, but you're better at networking. Okay, so let's start scratching out the articles and let's start doing networking, right? Or start doing interviews. If interviews work better for you because you feel that you're more committed to being prepared and to be on camera and to be with a third party offering value. Um, Basically, I think it's that is you have to have the courage to fail a lot, and to be like, I'm learning every single time and I become better. And you can actually see it. And a lot of the lawyers that I've worked with have done that, and their practice or their firm has grown incredibly. They're like, yeah, okay, the video wasn't perfect. I didn't look as, as handsome as I wanted to look, or I realized that I wasn't as eloquent as I wanted, but it worked. Yeah, it worked. It worked fine. Keep going. Next time, figure out what you need to do so that whatever errors or things you didn't like, you don't repeat them, or you repeat them, very, very little until you don't repeat them at all. So I think that's important. And a lot of people I've talked to think, oh no, you're successful because, it's just innate. No, most really successful people put in a lot of work and make a lot of mistakes to be as good as they are. And that's perfectly fine. That's how we learn how to walk, to talk, to do anything. And so that's one of the things that I tell the lawyers I work with. It's okay.
Right.
As long as you're not lying or saying something that's like, oh no, that was completely incorrect. Someone's going to catch you. That's not good. I think that's it. Go out there, make mistakes, do it better, get up again, make another
Right.
mistake.
You know, you remind me of something when I was starting out myself. I had a friend who was a very good marketer. He went into mediation. He was very good at marketing his mediation practice. And he said to me one time, and I always remember it, he says, it's really easy to become an overnight success after 10 years of hard work. And he's very good at putting out the newsletters and being visible and writing the articles and speaking at places and all that. And without that, it would be very hard to build anything. I have another question related to that, which is there's some attorneys who have a smaller practice, so they have a limited amount of time, right? And some attorneys are very good on camera and those types of things. Others don't like it at all. If you have someone who is trying to do the best they can, they're not comfortable on camera. They don't have the time to write the articles and things. They're busy with so many things. And they look into hiring like a ghostwriter or a social media expert. What are some of the pros and cons that people should look at there?
Wow. Well, the first thing I say, you have to check that whomever you're hiring actually has experience in the legal industry. Because the legal industry, I've been in different industries, is a completely different thing. And people could say, yeah, but every industry is different. Yeah, of course, every industry is different. But the legal industry is such an interesting industry because it's basically a people business. And the focus of everything is around people and people giving you opportunities. But many lawyers, it's changing now, I think too slowly, but it's changing, don't get any of this. And they get all of this wonderful technical knowledge, but all of this, how they're called soft skills, which I think they're really not soft at all. They're super important. Everything that has to do with emotional intelligence, I think is going to be more of a determining factor whether you're successful in life or not. Normally, sometimes there are a couple of courses, some universities, maybe in the States or in Europe or in different countries where you see, okay, we're teaching lawyers some of the stuff that they need so they can develop, not to be technically good, but to be really good at generating, clients, developing their practice, being a good boss, being a good mentor. And I think it's very interesting that it's not something that's being taught. So I think it's super important to focus on that as well. I don't know if that like answers the question. That's one thing. And then the other thing is if you don't have a lot of time and you want to hire somebody, you have to make sure the person has legal experience, like legal experience in the sense of working at a law firm or having worked with lawyers. You have to be able to check their content. And you have to also make sure that there's chemistry with the person. And what I'm referring to is you trust the person, you've seen their work, and you can work in an effective way with them, right? Sometimes people are like, no, I hired this person. They seemed really great. I didn't really do my due diligence. I realize now because they have a really bad personality or their way of work wasn't very clear to me. So you have to make sure if you're a lawyer that you have somebody that's been in the industry or has experience. It's somebody that you can work with. And then I think another thing that a lot of people don't think about that's extremely important is that the person has a flexible way of work. And what do I mean by that? Not that they're going to lower, what they charge you, but they're going to be smart enough to say, okay, I'm listening to my client and my client says he wants to write a book. Okay. I don't think he wants to write a book. I think that what he should do is he should write an article a month. And, I can help him with that. It's got to be somebody that can call you out on, I know this is what you want, and maybe we can build towards that. But I think that a more effective way would be to kind of change the plan a little bit and do it this way. And then explain why, right? And assist in that way. I think those are important things to consider.
Yeah, yeah. No, and it's when I'm sure you must receive, because I know I receive them all the time, these spam emails of these people who are going to do the perfect SEO for me and get me on the first page of the, all this stuff. Of course, none of it ever happens. And it is really important to be very careful, especially as an attorney, because you're talking about your reputation, you're talking about your credibility, like you said. And if you're going to find someone who is valuable, you're going to have to be willing to pay for the value that they provide. But also, like you said, having your own input, because someone else, they may be really good at what they do, but they're not going to be thinking about solving the problem the way you would solve the problem. And you want to be able to impress upon potential clients, this is how I do it. This is what my focus is. So it does require some editing and reviewing and rewriting and things like that at times. So if you were to be giving a talk to a group of new attorneys and they're just starting their practices, and we're talking about people that are starting solo practices or small firm practices now, what would you say to them if they had to pick one thing to start with? What would you say would be the most important thing for them to start with?
Okay, that's a good question because it depends on everyone's personality. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. I've seen that on an international level, it's where most lawyers are seeing what's happening. What are they doing? What are different law firms doing, or the competition? I think LinkedIn is important on an international level because you get to see a lot of what's going on, what's working, what your competition is doing. And you can decide how much you want to invest in that. Do you want to write like an article, or do you want to write it, or are you going to put an interview up, or what? I mean, you can invest, an hour a week, or you could go all out and spend 6 hours creating content for LinkedIn, where you're going to see other lawyers, which could be general counsel at other firms, or other executives that could hire you. It depends what your practice is, right? It could be somebody from human resources, the CEO in human resources, or not the CEO, sorry, the human resources C-suite, or the CEO or whatever. But I think I have to answer this in two different ways. The first one is, if I have to choose one, I'd say LinkedIn, because it gives you a lot of opportunities to get yourself out there. You don't have to be in the room for people to see you, or for you to create that credible visibility if you do it correctly. And I think that's really important because we have a limited time, every single day, as and the energy we have. And you are able to reach a lot of many people than if you were just in a room or in a conference. However, I would say, if you ask me, that would be that I would say focus on LinkedIn and be
Okay.
disciplined because it can give you very good results. But if there's no way that you want to do anything that has to do with social media, specifically LinkedIn, I would say, okay, well, it may give you higher quality relationships. You're not going to reach as many people. And if you're in a place like Latin America, probably it could possibly make more sense because people are more about being in the space and talking and touching. Probably getting themselves out there once or twice a week to different conferences or panels. But if you say there's only one, I'd have to say LinkedIn, right? Because of the reach you can have.
Right.
But if you're focusing on quality and you're going to be very disciplined and you're going to make sure you do this and you're going to reappear in these circles so that people see you again. Oh, hi, how are you? You start really developing trust, credibility. That's also another option. And then build from there, right? It just, you're like, oh, okay, now I've got to do this. And what we said in the beginning, start building your plan. Have, your strategy. Here I am. Here's where I want to go. I'm going to start doing this. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, like you said from the very beginning, it's got to match your personality. It's got to match your reality, in terms of your time commitment, your interest level, your focus, all those things. They have to be true to you so that they come across as true and honest and, credible. So, well, we have actually reached our time here. This went really, really quickly, and I appreciate all of the tips and information that you shared. It's great to hear from someone who's been working in this field for quite a while, so you really have your finger on the pulse, and I appreciate you sharing that with our audience.
No, of course. Of course. Anything that can add value so that lawyers feel more comfortable with their BD marketing efforts, I'm happy. I'm happy to help because I do feel bad that, lawyers are not taught any of these skills that they need to be a successful lawyer, not just a very good lawyer, but to be successful and to grow and to reach their dreams. So I think, yeah, it's great to be able to support, help, give tips. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast and you want to hear additional episodes from other experts, we talk about LinkedIn specifically, we talk about writing books, we talk about all the different aspects of getting your practice out there and building your credibility. Take a look at BePicked, BE-PICKED.com. You'll find the podcast episodes, you'll find blog articles and additional information. I want to thank you all for listening and encourage you to come back for more episodes. And Chantal Williams, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Andrew. And great. This is great. I have seen your content and I think it's great and it's helping a lot of people. So I think it's great, a lot of lawyers.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. If you are enjoying this content, please like and subscribe. Thank you.